Today's guest picks apart Lyme disease in a way that you have definitely never heard before. And Lyme disease is such a specific niche in just the health and wellness industry overall. And Heather just gives us an all new perspective on how and why you might actually be the perfect host for this type of condition. And if you have a type A personality, you're definitely going to want to tune into this episode.
Yes. And Heather describes herself as the Lyme Boss. And it really shines through in this episode that she offers this tough love so that clients can get better, but she does it with a whole lot of heart. She's walked the walk. It's very clear to see. She's very charismatic. So let's get to it and dive in. Hello and welcome everyone to the Vibrant Wellness Podcast once again. I'm your host, Dr. Emmy Brown, here with my friend and colleague, Melissa Gentile. Today we're joined by Heather Gray, the Lyme Boss herself. She is a Lyme literate functional medicine practitioner and speaker who is a beacon of hope for those battling complex autoimmune conditions and complicated cases of Lyme disease, an infection sometimes referred to as the Great Imitator. Heather's journey into the world of health and wellness began with a personal quest to heal her son and eventually confronted her own health battles. Diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease after 28 years of living with undiagnosed symptoms, Heather turned her pain into purpose, developing a program that not only put her Lyme into remission, but also reversed 3 out of 4 of her autoimmune issues. But Heather's mission doesn't stop with her own recovery. Through the Lyme Boss practice, she's dedicated to helping others navigate their health challenges, offering programs that dive deep into diet, lifestyle, mindset, detox, and more. So let's get started.
Thanks so much for having me. I don't know, that bio, that was like better than what I have written. You're going to have to send that back to me. I'm going to have to use that again. I was like, that's really good.
No problem.
Awesome.
All right. So let's get this started with really your experience with Lyme. Can you describe a specific moment after the point you were diagnosed with Lyme? What was that like for you in terms of next steps? Because I imagine it was probably difficult to get to that point. You said 28 years of symptoms without a diagnosis. So at the moment you were diagnosed with Lyme, what was that like for you?
Actually, if it's okay, I'd like to go even further back.
Sure, whatever you like.
Because so many people are just focused on treatment of Lyme. And that's I'm the exact opposite, screaming you. There's so many other things that you have to focus on, right? It's very rarely a cause and effect, black and white, So I usually start off, and I can make it quick, I promise, that I was basically born full of shit, right? Like, how many people know when they were little, they experienced chronic constipation? Like, it's a thing.
Absolutely.
And that was the beginning of my, let's throw Band-Aids at symptoms. They were, really thick, nasty oils, stool softeners, but no one was trying to figure out why this 4-year-old was constipated, right? Hindsight's 2020. My uncle had committed suicide that year, and there was a lot of early childhood trauma going on that kind of kicked off that first autoimmune process that I had in place of being celiac. And back then I was eating a standard American diet, right? I didn't know any better. My parents didn't know any better. It was, mac and cheese and Kool-Aid and hot dogs. And
that was the time.
That was the time, So I start off that way because I want to show people that, like I said, it's never you just got bit by a tick or a flea or sexually transmitted and you got a disease. There's something that makes you a good host, right? And so it was my early childhood trauma coupled with celiac disease. Now I've got a leaky gut. Now I've got a leaky, inflamed brain, Then we had more trauma happen in my high school years. The people, I was raised by addicts, so there's a lot of anger and inflammatory stuff going on there. And then cue mold toxicity, right? So by the time I got bit by a tick when I was 13, I was the perfect host to develop Lyme disease and its co-infections that come along with it, because Lyme disease usually never comes by itself. It's usually always with, the 3 Bs. So, that's the part that I like to drive home right off the bat is, like, you guys know too, with autoimmune, usually there's something in place 5, 10, 15 years before they actually start getting symptoms and presenting with autoimmune. It's actually very similar with Lyme disease as well.
So it really, you had that perfect storm.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'm curious also, just segueing to professional talk now, was that experience what inspired you to become a practitioner, or had you always wanted to go into health and wellness and medicine? And what were you doing before?
It's funny
If
that
not,
you ask. It's funny. Yeah, no, absolutely. I, um, I started off looking for natural ways to help heal my brain when I was in high school,
wow.
right? Because for some reason, intuitively, I didn't want to be on the drugs that they put me on. They never really helped. So one part that I skipped is that I ended up 2 times in the psych ward, one time at 15 and one time at 19 for suicide attempts. Right. So like I said, my brain was inflamed, more band-aids on symptoms, not trying to get to the root cause of why this 15-year-old was trying to off herself.
Mm,
So I was trying to become my own health advocate at that age. And it was
good for
funny.
you.
So thank you. It was funny because I'm researching about herbs and, different amino acid therapies, right, to help with the brain. But I was still eating that inflammatory, diet. I was still drinking tap water. I was still not sleeping at
Mhm.
night, so there's all these things. I just had one little piece to that puzzle. And so of course then I was like, it's not working. So I was a hairstylist for 15 years
Okay.
and that very toxic environment, right? Between all the
Hard to yeah.
chemicals and yeah,
Yes.
hugely. And it's, we laugh because we talk about people's toxic bucket. I had a detox thimble, right? So it didn't take much for it to
Mhm.
overload and me get sick. I was like the canary in the coal mine.
Mm.
But yeah, so then I got diagnosed when I was 34, I believe. And you were asking me, what was that moment like after being diagnosed? And so it's going to be the title of my book, and I still have to write it. It's coming out this year, I swear.
Yes.
But
Congrats.
I'm driving down I-25 in Colorado, 75 miles an hour, tears streaming down my face, and I scream, "I told you I'm not crazy." And that's gonna be the title of my book. I
Mm.
told you I'm not
I have
crazy, the
chills.
realities of Lyme disease, right? Because that's what I was told my whole life, and I actually wanna get a new movement started of we stop calling people crazy, instead we start saying your brain inflammation is showing, because that's what's really happening. Because once you slap that crazy on somebody, that stigma, you get dismissed. You talk about gaslighted, like Lyme clients we are the very definition of gaslit, especially in the medical community. If you look up a picture, there's going to be a Lyme patient there because the CDC just recognized chronic Lyme disease as a real disease just a year ago.
Mhm.
Like wrap your brain around that. Like the disease that I've had for almost all my life is just now being recognized. So yeah. So I I went the traditional route at first. It didn't go well.
Mhm.
They wanted to throw napalm at a body that had been sick for decades. Nobody asked me how I was pooping, which I still wasn't, right? So from 4 years old on to 34 years old, I'm still not pooping on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Nobody was asking me about my sleep or my diet or, all the other things as functional practitioners know, that need to have happen before you go to war with a person's body. So I
Yeah.
thought I was going to die. And then that's when I heard the founder on a podcast, the
Mhm.
founder of FDN. He was speaking with Sean Croxton of Underground Wellness, if any of y'all remember him back in the day. And they were talking about how you need to make sure your detox pathways are open and you got to make sure your gut is healed and that your hormones are balanced, all the functional things.
Right.
And I was a hairstylist. And for some reason, intuitively, I was like, that's it. That's going to be my ticket. And that's kind of what drew me into the alternative health world and started this beautiful path back in 2013.
Absolutely. Wow. And that imagery of you driving away, was that right after you got the diagnosis in
Absolutely.
Colorado and screaming with this release, I imagine, of so many years of pent-up emotion and pain and frustration? It's so
Absolutely.
profound. And I think
Validation, right? I finally had
absolutely.
my golden ticket. I knew what the monster's name was.
Oh, yeah. That's I don't know, just it's really inspiring. I think that really drives it home for people that there is, keep looking and keep looking for practitioners who can help you. And that's really just the beginning. And it was the beginning of your journey.
Oh, huge. And it's so sad because I get people all the time. They're like, I've seen 20 people, I've seen 30 people, and they want to give up. And if
Mm,
I kind of did the same thing, I would go through phases where I would look at new practitioners, I wouldn't get understood or heard, and then I would stop. And then I would do this like dance. And then when I met the woman who diagnosed me, literally, I was in her office for 5 minutes. She had this
wow.
beautiful accent. I can't remember where she was from. And she got this twinkle in her eye. And she's like, I know exactly what's wrong with you. And I'm thinking, bullshit, lady. Like, you've known me for 5 minutes. I've been looking for answers my whole life. And she goes, no, have you ever been bit by a tick? And I was like, Yeah, I remember pulling one out of my stomach when I was 13 when I lived in Missouri. And she goes, I'm pretty sure you have Lyme disease. So I had that moment with somebody like a year ago, and it brought me right back there. He's been looking for answers, and in just talking with him, I got that little twinkle in my eye, and I'm like, I think I know what's wrong with you.
Right, and you have that experience, so then you can clinically identify those cases that much easier
Absolutely.
after time, but it's really the great imitator, so it takes time in some cases. Um, I really like your blog, Heather, and you mentioned on one of your blog posts that addressing underlying issues such as immune system dysfunction, gut health, and inflammation can play a vital role in achieving long-term remission of Lyme, of course. But also doing nervous system work, trauma work, and mindset work was key to your remission. Can you share for our listeners who include practitioners and uh, people interested in health and wellness? Can you share how do you guide your clients to find practitioners to help them do that kind of work? What should they look for?
Oh, absolutely. I became the practitioner I needed, and so I
Mm.
teach a lot of this stuff. So it's funny. I'm dealing with a sleep issue now. And so I always tell people there's 3 barriers to health when it comes to, before you should ever start attacking the Lyme. And one of it's sleep apnea, one of them is mold toxicity, and the other one's cavitations. And
Mm.
I had I had my wisdom teeth removed when I was 13. And lo and behold, I had this massive infection that was locked in my jaw, right? So close to the brain, so vascular. And so my troops were scattered, right? And so all the best diet in the world, all the best supplements in the world, all the best everything in the world is not going to do you a hill beings of good if you're not getting enough oxygen when you sleep at
All
night.
walled off.
You're
Yep.
living in mold, or if you've got chronic infection going on. Um, and so I did the prep, the functional thing, and was really great at dialing in the supplements and the diet and the detox and all that wonderful stuff. And then I keep relapsing. And then I'd clean myself up all again, and then I kept relapsing. That happened about 3 or 4 times before I finally was asking, "Okay, what's the next step?" Right? Like, I'm missing something.
Hmm.
This still doesn't feel like a normal part of healing. And lo and behold, the book, The Body Keeps Score, came into my
I love this book. I'm so happy you brought this up.
that book, I'm sitting on my couch, ugly crying, it was so triggering. My husband's like, "What are you reading?" And I'm like, "This little girl and her dad." He's like, "No, no, no, no." But it was the first time that I had heard that you can actually like retrain the nervous system, retrain the brain, that you don't have to get stuck in this fight or flight, right? Which I didn't even realize I was, but my startle, I've always had a ridiculously over exaggerated startle response. And that is a very flag on the play, right? Telltale sign of that your nervous system is dysregulated. And so that actually took me into an ayahuasca journey, which took me into 2 psilocybin journeys, which took me into 2 bufo journeys. Right now I'm on ketamine, but I also learned somatic experiencing work. I also learned breath work. I also learned tapping. I also learned like there's so many beautiful,
Mm.
easy, simple things you can do to retrain your nervous system and get out of fight or flight. And the majority of those things are free and they're easy and they don't take a whole lot of time to do. But very rarely are you going to find a practitioner that encompasses all the pieces, right? So
Right.
being okay with having a team and right, knowing that that might be what it takes for you, right? So, a functional practitioner working on this, and then a mindset person working on this, and then, maybe a body worker, right? Because there's still like acupuncture, chiropractic, there's still a structural component
Of
to health as
course.
well, right? So addressing them all is absolutely crucial, especially to overcoming anything chronic and as complex as Lyme.
It's really curating a team, and that can take some time, I imagine. Um, and some people aren't ready to meet with therapists, so it is more of the body work, as you said, or just teaching themselves how to do the tapping, which is the EFT. We were talking about that the other day, Melissa and I.
Yeah,
Um,
favorite.
so yeah, and it's kind of, and I'm sure journaling is another piece that maybe some people gravitate towards, or tool rather. So lots of different ways to tap into that, but just really reminding listeners that that mind work is huge. Absolutely, that
Yeah.
stress response.
It's sad how still people will dismiss it. And it's like, you know how powerful your thoughts are? Like, think of something that turns you on. tell me you don't have a physical response happening on in your body when you're thinking about something that turns you on. Or think about putting a whole lime in your mouth or a lemon, right? Like,
Ooh.
think about your salivary glands that are starting to kick on.
Yeah.
Like, with these thoughts create a chemical cascade of responses and hormones and things that happen in the body. And it was sad. Anytime something new would go on with him, my anxiety is still really off the hook. What supplement can you give me? And I'd be like, did you do your grounding today? Did you get outside and put your feet on the ground? Did you earth stay? Did you get some vitamin D? Did you get movement? Did you do your
Yeah.
breath work? All these things. No, no, no.
Yep.
I'm not giving you another supplement. Like, you've got to dial in these foundational pieces if you want to change and keep that change. There's so many folks that, will come out of Lyme treatment and they'll feel better 3, 6, 7, 9 months until the boogeyman comes, down the pike, like COVID or, whatever they're cooking up next. I'd rather make resilient, healthy, immune, robust people that can handle what this life is going to throw at us,
Absolutely. Yeah.
not live in a bubble.
And that's why it's foundational. You have nothing to stand on without a foundation. So thank you for that reminder. Um, for many, Heather, Lyme disease is complex. We've driven home that point already. From your expertise, what are the most common misconceptions you hear about Lyme?
Ah, Kim Bruno and I see this very, very similar. It's Lyme disease, never limes, never with an S, never with an S. So
Yes.
there's one misconception. Number
Yes.
two is that people, oh, I didn't get a bullseye rash. Well, only 30% of people who get Lyme disease actually get a bullseye rash. I was one that did not. And that's why I slipped through the cracks. My mother was a nurse, and I actually didn't start showing symptoms until, like I said, it was about 2 years later when it really started affecting my brain and my gut. And I ended up in the psych ward for a suicide attempt. So, um, bullseye rash. The other one is that it's, all in your head or that you're some kind of hypochondriac, because one of the telltale signs is migrating pain.
Hmm.
And there's only like 6 diseases in the whole disease book that have migrating pain as a symptomology, right? So, and it is just like it sounds. Like, one day it's my right shoulder, and then the
Right.
next day it's my left knee, and then it's my right hip, and it literally, it migraines the pain. So if you hear that, don't automatically think that the person is crazy or a hypochondriac or it's all in their head, because that migrating pain is a very real sign and symptom of Lyme disease.
And you have a quiz on your website about Lyme symptoms. And what kind of questions do you use in your intake or discovery calls to assess new Lyme patients' conditions?
That one I can't take credit for. That's a Dr. Horowitz's questionnaire, and I love using that. And then, like, in conjunction with Cellcore, has got a beautiful intake form as well. It's like over
Okay.
400 questions long,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
free. But
Yeah.
it really helps tease out, is it Lyme? Is it co-infections? Is it mold? Is it heavy metals? Is it parasites? Right? Because a lot of these things have overlapping symptoms. And the testing can be expensive, especially, Lyme testing. And I love my Lyme testing through you folks, especially the ones that absolutely need to see it in black and white before they'll go through with treatment, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of questions that can kind of unearth that. So that way I know, okay, well, actually, I'm thinking you're more of a mold issue. So we need to pivot and deal with this type of stuff first, and then redo the intake forms and kind of go from there. Cause not everybody has, $5,000 right off the bat to do all the lab testing. Not saying that's what it is, but, in conjunction, right? And so that way I can have a more targeted approach of, instead of just throwing, money at a wall and seeing what sticks. So, yeah.
And getting specific, you mentioned that you might see some things that might make you think that someone is more of a mold patient than a Lyme patient. What are some of those things? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, that's a really good question.
Like, what kinda gets those wheels turning, like, "Oh, you know what? Maybe this might not be Lyme. It might be something else."
So if somebody presents with a lot of sinus infections,
Mm.
a lot of headaches, a lot of allergies, that usually kind of gives me a telltale sign of mold. Because unfortunately, a lot of, like I said, a lot of the brain inflammation, the fatigue, will overlap. Um, but most, yeah, definitely, like I said, if someone's coming to me with, I've got horrible allergies, I get sinus infections all the time, headaches, blurred vision, that type of stuff will make me kind of go, huh, have you ruled out mold?
Makes sense. Yeah, that respiratory kind of sinus and nasal passages, I think mold too.
Yep.
What about co-occurring mold and Lyme? What's the connection there? We talk about the immune system dysregulation in both mold and Lyme. How do you tease that out? I mean, like, just what's your take on those patients who have both?
With that intake form is one of the ways I tease it out too. It's if I'm working with them with Lyme and we hit a plateau and they're not getting any better, then I know we kind of got to circle back. But a lot of times I like to really rule that out in the beginning. Like I said, there's those 3 barriers to health that I talked about, mold, um, cavitations, and sleep apnea.
Mm.
And so I really, really try to make sure that that's not an issue as we're going into it, because it is absolutely going to be a barrier. And then I just recently heard Dr. Tom O'Brien, who's done some work with you guys. He really loves the
Yes.
Zoomers. He's got a docuseries coming out, and he's had someone talking on it on how Lyme will cross react like mold, or
Ooh.
opposite. So people will come in thinking it's a positive Lyme and it's actually mold, but it's cross reacting on the test. Like, I've never heard this before, and I can't wait to
Wow.
actually see the documentary. So don't quote me on the whole thing, but he just like dropped a little like truth bomb on me the other day, and I was like, but there's a huge correlation, and a lot of it has to do with our genetics. Like I said, I've got crappy detox genes. I've got, a lot of mutations in my genes that just leave me more susceptible to being a sensitive person, chemically sensitive, leaky gut, autoimmune, all those things. And so, yeah, they typically do very much go hand in hand. Like, I don't deal with too many Lyme people that I'm not also detoxing them from mold at the same time. I mean, in the mold, the stats on mold, I mean, like 50% of buildings are, water damaged. And it's just, it's
It's
sad. It's
it's
ridiculous.
sad.
We got rid of lead paint, right? Because of obvious reasons. But the part of the reason why there was lead in the paint was because it actually kept the mold down. And so that
Oh, I
was,
didn't know that.
and the fact that we're creating these energy efficient houses now that don't breathe, right? So
Yeah.
there's like a double whammy. And we've changed, building materials over the years. Freaking drywall is like drywall and carpet is like mold's like woo preferred food,
Oh
so
gosh.
it's just nuts what we've done.
It's the
It's like
cheapest
one of those
materials.
things. Yeah, it's like one of those things that you can't unsee it or unlearn it. What you know about mold, it's like you're feeling into how does the air feel in this building? You're checking everything, you're like seeing what things are built. Like, it's just I just can't unlearn any of the things now
Nope.
about it. It's crazy.
Nope.
Um, but going into the role of diet and lifestyle and like treatment and like once you have a patient kind of moving forward from there, I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit about your unique method. So you have a unique method that you've developed for treating Lyme disease. And can you walk us through the core principles of the Lyme Boss method and what makes it effective?
Oh, you're pulling out the Lion Boss. I haven't pulled that acronym out in a while.
Oh,
I'm like, let me find it. Oh, it was just close. Okay, so L, lymph, drain, detox. Oh my God. If I was like to rebrand myself, it'd be like the detox diva or the detox something, because detox completely changed my life. Like, coffee enemas are my jam. I remember my ex-husband used to get so annoyed with me because he's like, do you have to talk with people about coffee enemas? I'm like, yes, because it made such a huge change in my life. And again, it's one of those less expensive, right? You can do it at home. Like, you don't, yeah, taking your own health back. So detox. Why would be putting yourself first. I can't count how many type A personality women that I am working with that have these autoimmune diseases,
mm.
because we are taught to put everybody, and this is National Women's, month. And
Yes.
I'm saying, women, you've got to fill your own cup up first. You
Mm.
have to put on your own oxygen mask first, right? And it's incredible how, since I have been putting myself first, nothing else is, our fear is that something's not going to get done. Something's going to fall through the crack, but
Or
it's not,
disappointable.
right? Or, oh yeah, God, heaven forbid we disappoint somebody.
Mhm.
But I am actually a better mother, a better lover, a better partner, a better everything once I started putting myself first. So put yourself first. M would be mindfulness. So it's
Mm.
going back to that mindset training.
Yep.
right? And how potent and powerful our thoughts really are. E is exercise, but in a balanced way, right? It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We've got these CrossFitters over here, and I'm like, your adrenals are fried, like their hormones are
Which
whacked,
true.
right? I don't know where I can't lose weight. I'm in the gym 5 hours a day. You need to dial that back. And then we've got the opposite of people who have been bedbound. But I'm saying that even if you can get out of bed and try to walk for even just 5 minutes a day, right? Like that's how our lymph moves. That's how we detox. Like movement is crucial to humans. What else we got? We got be the boss of your own health journey. So taking back that control, right? O, organic. Again, so it's part of that detox. The less toxins that we have on our body, the more that our body can do its own thing. And so starting, even if you can only afford to stay away from the Dirty Dozen,
Right.
go to the EWG's website, look up Dirty Dozen, stay away from those. And then, I used to go into the grocery store every week, like Sprouts or whatever, and they have their sale ads. In the beginning when I had a kid, I couldn't afford all organic. But I would go through the sale ads and I would see what was on sale that week. And, slowly during time, I was able to add in more and more organic. And now my diet is now like 99% organic. And it's amazing. Stress reduction for one S and self-care for the other S. So stress reduction is a lot of that nervous system retraining again, because it's so sad. Doctors are always telling you got to lower your stress, but they never tell you how,
Yes.
right? I,
Yeah.
I
You're
was
right on
gonna
the
say
money.
that earlier. Yeah.
It's horrible. So I teach some somatic experiencing work. I teach breath work. One of my favorite is box breathing, right? It's just like it sounds. It's, 4 counts in, hold for 4 counts, 4 counts out, and hold for 4 counts. And those holds at the top and the bottom are actually more important than the in and the out, because that's really what's triggering that nervous system. But I'll have my clients do it before meals, right?
Okay.
Because if you're in fight or flight, you're not in rest and digest. And so many people have digestive issues. So let's get your digestive juices going right before you eat. So do 3 rounds of box breathing before you eat. Do it for a week. You'll be amazed at how much better your digestion gets. And then, so then the last S is self-care. So, yeah, but again, putting that mask on first, right? Notice that, so in the functional world, the FDN world, it's a dress for success. So it's diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. But notice how that last S is supplementation. And that's where a lot of practitioners, I think, go wrong, is even in the functional world, right? They're trading out a prescription for a supplement, which yes, is healthier, but at the same time, they're not getting to the root cause,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's the same
So
kind of method as the
exactly. So I tell
allopaths.
my clients all the time, if you go see a new acupuncturist or anybody and they're only relying on supplements, like run.
Very
Because you're
true.
making your body is still dependent on something outside of
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm still taking 15 supplements a day, and I haven't had an issue with Lyme in over years, and I can't see a way around that. When I do my lab work, it still shows that I'm low vitamin D, that I'm low this, I'm low that. I think when you've had these chronic issues, that and our food is depleted, right? There's not the same kind of minerals in our food that it used to be, and we've had a heavier toxic burden.
And kind of staying on the topic of tools, what's the best dietary protocol for a Lyme patient for Lyme treatment? So I know you mentioned staying organic, but does everyone's diet look different? Are you like, I really appreciate the paleo diet for all Lyme patients, or is it something else?
That's a great question. I, in the beginning, used to do metabolic typing because I'm not a fan of a one size fits all. And metabolic typing was a huge way to really get individualized with folks. And it's kind of similar to like maybe the blood type diet type of thing, because there are a lot of validities behind that. And the more and more I started learning about grains and toxins and all this other stuff, I do end up simplifying it and keeping people on a paleo type diet minus their food sensitivities. So I will run a Zoomer on them, because wheat, dairy, and corn, right, are usually the ones that people are like refuse to give up unless they actually see some results. So I will run a wheat, dairy, and grain Zoomer and show them, and then a food sensitivity panel that comes with that. And then so that's their individualized diet, and then along with a paleo type diet, because we need to heal the gut. Because I love Weston A. Price as well. He was a dentist back in the 1930s who was, going to different tribes across the world and seeing how in one generation of eating a standard American diet, what it was doing to their mouth and their teeth health. And so they were showing that if we're eating grains, they need to be soaked or sprouted, right? Dairy was fermented or cultured, all these things that have been lost in this modern convenience world, and it's wreaking havoc on our gut health, on our brain health. And so just to make it easier for folks, I just cut all that out. And then at some point, 6 months, 9 months, a year down the line, when they're starting to heal, if they want to bring some of that stuff back in, but they want to do it in a more traditional aspect, that I kind of allow it. But for the most part, those foods, we've changed them too much. They're they're saturated with fungicides, pesticides, glyphosate, they're wreaking havoc to our health.
And grains can be high in mold too. So if you're seeing a lot of
Huge.
mold in your Lyme patients, I mean, that's a whole nother reason to take the grains out. So I love that.
And corn is a huge, huge culprit for that. Like people, I'm Mexican. Like I actually had an easier time getting rid of wheat than I did with corn. Like seriously cried the day I was like, "What do you mean I can't eat corn anymore?
Yeah.
What about my people?" But then Siete,
I
came out
thought you
with
were going to say, I love them.
Right.
they have a practitioner course program, and they
Whoa.
actually had they have a conference every year in Austin
I
at
had
their
no idea.
headquarters.
This is
It's mind
different?
blowing. Siete.
Yeah, has their own event?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, in Austin, it was a month ago. The food demonstrations were unbelievable. The recipes that we got, the speakers they had there, like the whole event was just so incredible. But
Ooh.
they're people who are doing things the right way, right? Like, so I teach my people, my folks, yes, mourn the fact that you can't eat corn anymore, and then try to find a healthier substitute. These days, there usually is.
I like that you brought the fact that it can be challenging for people to take these things out of their diet, and I think that one thing that's so important is, like, yeah, it can be challenging to do so, but it is a form of self-love, kinda going back to your Lyme Boss method, like, cutting out the foods that don't work with your body and don't love you back, I feel like it's just a big form of self-respect.
Oh, absolutely. And, I wasn't perfect in the beginning, and I actually kind of like my clients not to be perfect. Like I want them to be perfect for at least like the first 2 months, and then go cheat and tell me how you feel. It never fails. They're like, "Oh my God, my stomach hurts so bad. I bloated." But when we're sick and we're already bloated, they don't feel those symptoms as readily as now that their body is starting to heal. And then now they're actually getting in tune with their body, and they're starting to see, "Ooh, these foods trigger this type of reaction." So then now they're not just having to listen to me and take my word for it, right?
And then also staying on the, topic here of, like, diet and lifestyle, where do you see Lyme patients kind of struggling the most when they come to you? Is it energy levels? Is it pain? Is it their brain function and focus?
All the above.
Everything?
All the
It's a lot.
above.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
about lab results, Heather? You mentioned the Zoomers, which tests for food sensitivities, but what kind of patterns do you see with these clients in
Mm.
terms of stool testing, toxins, micronutrients? Do you notice unique patterns? Because I'm sure you see clients who come to you and they just really want to focus on prevention and maintaining, feeling their best. Are there patterns that you see between the two groups of patients?
Most definitely. So definitely low iron, like anemic.
Mm.
Those kinds of parasites, critters are notorious for stealing that from us. Same thing with low zinc. Excess copper are usually two patterns that I see in folks. And that can really spur off a lot of anxiety and type of depression, mental health stuff. So what low D, again, that's another sign of like a leaky gut. They're not,
Mhm.
or they've got the genetic issues like I do, where I do not make, transport, store nothing from vitamin D. So that's usually really low. Of course, inflammatory markers are high. CD57 is typically low.
Mm.
A lot of gut dysfunction, a lot of IgG reactions with the gut stuff. Let's see what else. You know, congested liver. um, Almost everybody that I test, everybody will pop hot with a wheat zoomer. I've not
Mhm.
not had a wheat zoomer come back normal. because that's usually just kind of chicken and the egg type of thing.
And what advice would you give to someone who is trying to take control? Like maybe they're a parent and they suspect that their child might be suffering from a condition that's being overlooked. Like, what advice would you give to those people?
To be the parent. It was so sad. I had a woman come to me and she's like, her teenager was suicidal and in a home and she was
Mm.
just desperate. I'll do anything. And I'm like, well, first off, you need to start cooking for him. And she was like, what?
Wow.
I need to cook for him? And like that, she cut the conversation off at that point. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Oh,
Wow.
because I was like, what's his diet? Like, oh, pizza, pasta, typical teenager stuff. And I'm like, they will learn by example and they will lead what you give them, right? Like you buy the groceries, right? Does he go out and buy the groceries? I don't think so. Do you the one that cooks the meals? Granted, teenagers can be a little harder because they then go out in the world and they have to be around their peers and stuff. And I find that just educating them, usually not the parents. Usually, if you can find someone who's talking the language that you want them to hear, you get somebody else to say it because for some reason, your loved ones can't hear it from you.
Mm. I love that you say that because adolescence can be tricky in
Ooh, so tricky.
practice. And oftentimes you're getting the history and you're dealing with both parent or caregiver and child and teen, and sometimes they're very autonomous and they're speaking to you, that teenager, they're looking at you, they're making eye contact. But then oftentimes I find they're only looking at the parent.
Mm,
They're looking, oh, how many times a day do I have a bowel movement, mom, dad? Well, you need to
right,
answer that question.
right.
But if you can connect with them, that's really gonna make the difference, and even finding maybe, I don't know, what you said, they're hearing it from somebody else. Maybe if you're not getting the message through as a practitioner, can you find something on, I don't know, some kind of,
My
uh,
documentary,
wellness coach or
my
resource?
ex-husband and my kid, when he was younger, I'd have them. If I wanted to get anything across, I'd have them watch documentary. And then afterwards, it
Smart.
was one from Jeffrey Smith, and it was about GMOs. It was like GMO roulette or something. And because my ex-husband was getting on me about my grocery bill.
Mhm.
We need to cut corners and you need to cut down your grocery budget. I said, absolutely not. And then I was like, how do I get him to understand? So then I had him watch that genetic roulette. And then afterwards, he's like, oh my God, GMOs, we should only eat organic. I'm like, really? Okay, that
I
sounds
wonder
great.
who said that. I wonder who
Yeah.
told you that at first.
Yeah, exactly.
Have to know now. What are some of your favorite grocery staples?
Oh, some of my favorite grocery staple avocados, of course, healthy fat. They're delicious,
Yes.
amazing. They're good quality salts, right? Like
Mhm.
Redmond's real salt, because most people have got adrenal issues and we're not getting actually enough of the right kind of sodium. Meat. I'm a huge meat eater. I love grass-fed, pasture-raised, humanely raised. I know my butcher, and I get buffalo and beef and pork from a specific um, farmer. And then there was for a while there, I was actually helping my other farmer process chickens. So I got to see how that whole process went. And
Cool.
then,
What about
but so
organ beats?
I don't like them, which makes me so sad because I know how good they are for you. I tried to hide them in anything and I can find it. I'm like, this has got liver in it, and I won't eat it.
And there's capsules now, though. Just put
I
that out
do.
there,
So actually,
freeze-dried
my friend
capsules.
Plux came out with a seasoning of organs that actually doesn't taste
Oh,
like
cool.
organs. So I'll put those in my smoothies. Yeah, huge fan of like organ meats are incredible. I wish I liked them, but I don't.
What's the brand?
Pluck.
Pluck, as in, like, plucking a chicken's
Yep.
feathers.
Yep.
Not to
Chef
be too
James, he
graphic.
was on my podcast. You have to listen to it. Like he was incredible. He's just such a light, and what he's doing in this world is amazing.
I'm wondering, Heather, we've got a couple more questions for you before we wrap it up. We talked about challenges on the side of the patients, but what about when you have challenges as a practitioner, when you run into obstacles, when somebody's really just hitting a wall, they're doing everything, they're really compliant for practitioners listening? How do you troubleshoot? Because, even the most seasoned practitioners, we come up against these challenging cases. What do you do?
To be quite honest with you, I've not ran into one case that it wasn't something that they
Mm.
didn't follow along with what I put out. They buck the system in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
And though I do not have the ego that thinks that I know it all. I have like 3 or 4 different amazing communities I belong to of brilliant minds, right? Of all different walks of practitioners. And I will absolutely get in front of them and being like, hey, I'm stumped. This is what I've got going on. That same tide raises all ship type of thing again. And most of them are so happy to help,
Mm.
right? To lend that ear. Or if it gets to the point where it is just way beyond my scope, then I have so many people that I can refer out to. But that doesn't happen very often. But I've built that sort of team around me of different practitioners for that very reason, because it is a very complex. I'm not very versed in pandas, and I know that's like my next little layer of onion to peel back because it goes along with Lyme and mold.
Mhm.
They're all kind of the when I became the Lyme boss, I had never in a million years that I think I was going to have to learn as much about mold as that I have, right? Or leaky gut, or they all, because they're all intertwined, heavy metals, parasites. I'm like, "Oh, I just want to focus on Lyme." But it's never just Lyme,
Yeah,
it's the childhood trauma, it's
absolutely. So lean on your mentors. That's the message I'm
absolutely.
hearing.
110%.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, and finally, for those listening, whether they're battling Lyme disease, co-infections, mold, as you said, trauma, or they know someone who is, what message of hope would you want them to leave this conversation having?
Never, never, never give up. If this ex hairstylist who lived in the trailer park who has no money, no medical background can overcome this type of stuff, you can as well. You've got to get creative. Right. And I think that's part of these lessons that were kind of given to us on earth. It's how bad do you want it and how creative can you get? I have filed bankruptcy 3 times. I have had multiple GoFundMe's. I've had, you name it. I got creative and I am here now, right, with a successful practice, traveling all over the world, getting to speak, living a life that I didn't even know was possible because I never gave up.
I love that.
That's such a powerful message. Thank
Yeah, absolutely. So many people think that, oh, well, they're just a practitioner, or oh, their families were doctors, or oh, they just, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just a regular Joe Schmo, who reversed 2 autoimmune diseases, lost over 100 pounds, detox mold, got rid of heavy metals, got rid of cavitations, and put Lyme in remission. Like, seriously, if I can do it, almost anybody can do it.
All of that belongs on your resume because it's extremely valuable for what you do and what you
Absolutely.
offer.
110%.
I was gonna say that's really powerful stuff, and I think it also helps kind of close the gap, too, as well between like you and a patient. Because I think when a patient sometimes comes in, they put their practitioner on a pedestal, thinking that like, oh, they've never experienced what I'm experiencing, but it's like, no, you've really gone through it all, so you can really relate to them on a whole new level.
Right. No, absolutely. But sometimes I could be the wrong kind of level because I'm like, come on, buttercup, suck it up. Like, I did this. You can do this. Like, you can't. I'm not going to let you hide. I'm not going to let you continue to be a victim. Right. I'm not going to let you fall into those patterns of sometimes a typical practitioner can, because I know it's tough and I've gone through it and I know you can as well. So I'm not going to let you give up.
Well, sometimes we need the tough love.
Yeah, that's Lyme Boss, like, it pretty much sums it up because I do lean a little on I am huge love. I've got a huge heart. I don't know anybody who's in the Lyme space who doesn't. Like, who would get
You have
involved
to.
in such a complex, crazy ass, no. But I will. I am very direct, and I'm not gonna blow sunshine up your ass because that's not how you're gonna get better.
And as we wrap up today's conversation, I'm just really thinking of all the great perspectives that we touched on in such a unique niche part of our industry. Lyme disease can be such a huge challenge. And Heather, your holistic approach and marrying the scientific with your personal experience and then the physical with the emotional aspect really offers such a fresh perspective on health and wellness. And I know it's really going to resonate with the right audience. And Heather, before we close, I always like to end each episode on a really positive note. And I like to ask each guest, what does it mean to you to live a vibrant life?
What does it mean to me to live a vibrant life? it means that I have energy after work to actually go then play with my friends and my family, right? A lot of times you only have energies to do one or the other, and the other stuff goes to fall away. So living a vibrant life allows me to go salsa dancing and to
Mhm.
travel, like go to the ocean and take stand-up comedy classes. That's like such an edge. But I'd only be able to do that if it wasn't for my vibrant health. So yay.
It's like to have a full experience.
Yeah, I was just getting
Yeah.
ready to say that. Thank you.
I want to see your comedy. Please share it when that
Yeah, it's
comes to the
the
stage.
showcase comes out April 17th. I'm on my final draft edit for the bit, and then I have to start learning it. And whoo, we talk about an edge because there's parts of me that are coming out that I've never spoken about publicly before. And it's supposed to be cathartic, but it's scaring the living shit out of me right now.
Of
So
course, as it should, and that's part
right.
of the thrill.
Yeah.
And you're smiling so big right now, and
I just hope they laugh. I swear to God, that's like my worst nightmare, right? It's just getting up there and having like cricket
where is the performance?
and Boulder.
Okay, yeah. I imagine they're
I
probably a
imagine
friendly crowd.
yeah,
Maybe?
I hope so. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I wish you the
And
best
to
on that.
Thank you.
And to our audience, if Heather's insights have sparked a curiosity, or if you find yourself seeking guidance, you're encouraged to connect with her. Heather's a wealth of knowledge and can be accessed through her website. Heather, what is your website and where else can we find you online?
Everywhere it's the limeboss.com and it's LYME, not lime like we're making margaritas. So yeah, the Lyme Boss, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I've got my podcast, the website. There's so many free resources on my website. That's usually where I have people start.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link this down in the show notes too. So if you're listening and want to go check out Heather's site, we'll put that in the show notes. And Heather, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. And we hope to have you again next week. And if you're not already, don't forget to follow at Vibrant Labs on Instagram to stay in the know of our upcoming episodes. And until next time, stay vibrant.
Thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe so we can continue to pay it forward together. And remember, the key to longevity is knowledge. Keep learning, growing, and tuning in to the Vibrant Wellness podcast to discover the latest insights and strategies for optimal health. Join us again next week. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The views expressed by guest and host are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy of Vibrant Wellness. As always, consult your healthcare provider before applying any recommendations that you heard here today.